Welcome to mintCast, the podcast by the Linux Mint community for all users of Linux. This is episode 488, recorded on Sunday, June 21st, 2026.
Still tired. I'm Joe.
Late as usual, I'm Bill.
Finally gone full hipster. I'm Jim.
Today in our wanderings, Joe takes a trip, I've got nothing, and Jim likes Indiana. Finally, the feedback and a couple suggestions. Please remember, if you want to follow along with our discussions, the full show notes for this episode are linked in the show's description. So, the wanderings. Joe?
Well, I was in Florida when I started taking these notes. I was using WireGuard to connect back to my house, but for some reason, the connection on the mini rack was unstable on the laptops, even though it's rock solid on my phone. But when I switched to the one on the router, it was much more stable, but it still cost speed for the connection as a whole. For a while, I was using it so that I could continue using Joplin, which I use for note taking. I did try to set up some temporary port forwarding, but I didn't want to set up anything in the Joplin server that would allow it to work. It requires the DNS to be whitelisted. So what I ended up doing was setting up a temporary port forward for the Proxmox instance and using one of my VMs to access Joplin. I also, while I was there, attempted to watch some things from remote with Plex, but Plex now requires you to install the desktop application in order to use it from outside your network. Not something I've had to deal with in a long time since I always, have WireGuard set up. I did install the Flatpak, but it bothers me that it has to be done that way. Plus, scrolling with the scroll wheel on the mouse doesn't work. I actually had to go over and grab the bar and drag it up and down. But the Plex app does work with my lifetime pass. But who knows for how much longer? We shall see. I also started the process of moving my family onto Jellyfin so I don't have to do it from far away when things stop working on the Plex front. Now, right before I left for Florida, I was having an issue with the Wi-Fi extender that is out in my garage. Some of my IoT devices are supposed to be connected to it, but while the broadcast IDs were there, none of them had an internet connection, even when my phone was connected. So I hooked it up to my garage PC and accessed the interface. The radio that connected to the main router was no longer working. It's got 3 antennas on it. Thankfully, there are 2 5 gigahertz antennas and one 2.4 gigahertz radio. And it was one of the 5 gigahertz that had stopped working. I did try to restart the radio, but nothing worked. So I made the other 5 gigahertz connect to the router and got everything working again. I have other of the extenders, and I do have the backup of OpenWRT so that I can set it up in a couple of minutes, just a couple of clicks, and it's running the new software. I don't think I'm going to spend the time to take it apart and get that antenna working properly, find out what went bad on it. I'll put it into a separate bin for a future project when I'm either bored or all of the others are broken beyond repair, and I have at least 10 of them. Now, also, while in Florida, my parents' internet went out for whatever reason, and that gave me a chance to try out some things. I pulled out another one of those travel routers and tried several things using the Lucy interface to try and get an internet connection while tethering from my phone. But in the end, I needed to do a full reset and just use the simple mode in the GL iNet version of OpenWRT. For the easy Wi-Fi sharing version, which also allowed me to use the Ethernet ports. Problem was this only got me about 500 kbps, and that was just too slow to get internet to everyone. Thanks, tethering. Easy Tether has not been updated in a very long time, so I looked again for an alternative and decided to try out the trial for TETRD, which will connect to a PC and has a Linux version so that it's up to date, but will not connect directly to a router. So I installed the server on the 5290, my tablet / laptop, and did the USB sharing, and speeds to my laptop were about 20 to 35 Mbps, which was a great improvement. So then I used Network Manager to switch my Ethernet port to sharing and switched it to the WAN port on the router, and now we had a usable internet for everyone in the house, which is about the time the regular internet came back on. So I switched the router back into a Wi-Fi repeater and then set up WireGuard on the switch on the side. It's got a little switch. You just push the button and it'll toggle whether or not WireGuard's on or not. And it does give me a high-speed connection back to the house very simply. And anything that I connect to it will just be like it was on my home network. Now, I mentioned it briefly, but TetRD, while not as useful as EasyTether, because EasyTether had the version that would install on OpenWRT, it does work and it does seem to get updates. It's free to install, but that is, a 3-day trial. Once you have the server and client, you can choose to pay $15 and get the full version, which allows tethering and reverse tethering, or you can pay $9.99 for either the tethering or the reverse tethering. It does provide full speeds from your carrier, which is the main use of it. But if I want to do something like use it in my car, I'm going to have to do something like set up a Pi as a router and install it there and hope that it works headless. I guess more testing will be needed in the future. But for now, for me, I think that the WireGuard tunnel back to my home network is worth it with the router setup that I can take anywhere. I will decide in the future about TetRD. Back in the DFW, I decided to make some adjustments to my workspace in the garage. It's a little too hot to work in there during the day anymore, most days. But there were some changes I wanted to make to my work table, which is just an old coffee table with a 4-inch tall board that covers part of the top that I previously added. Added a couple of small sliders to so that it can move back and forth on top of the table. That works pretty well, but the rest of the table is short and requires me to hunch over to work on it. Plus, I also put sliders on the end of the table legs so that I can move it back and forth, but those did not work very well. 2 birds, 1 stone, I wanted to add wheels to the bottom of the legs to make it easier to move and make it taller. I was able to find several STLs, 3D images, for chair wheel adapters, and I took that as well as the measurements from the bottom of the legs of the table, and I made some thick end caps. Also spent $6 on some new wheels. I have some somewhere, but I wasn't able to find them, and it was just easier to buy some new ones. And at $6, I can't really complain. Anyways, I moved all the stuff off on the top of the table, and I pulled out all the toolboxes and organizers that were underneath the table and moved them out of the way. And 10 hours of printing later, I put everything together and it came out perfect, like first try. I did also have a couple of test prints for the butt cap itself to make sure that it was the correct size and fit. And I did have to go underneath the table and tighten the legs so that they wouldn't wiggle and unbalance everything. It moves very well, and the height is much better for working on. It's much easier to solder without having to hunch over. I also want to make a taller set of sliders for the movable workspace that's on the top of it. So a couple of things, like when I move it, I don't have to pick everything up first. I can just leave a couple of things there. But that is for another day. I did not get it done before the writing of this show. But as I was getting ready to move all the boxes back into position underneath the table, my dog found the open space and decided that was where he was going to sleep from now on. So he dragged his bed under there, and that's where it is. So I need to find a new spot to put all my tools. Next up, I decided to test out ebook to audiobook, which is an application that converts ebooks to audiobooks. I have several series of books that are older that I enjoy that simply have never made it to audiobook format of any kind, and I want to be able to enjoy them in whatever format I choose. I do have Voice Aloud, which does the job very well, but I would prefer to do everything from the same application instead of having to use the one application to download and then the other application to listen to it. So the application that I want to use is Audio Bookshelf. Ebook to audiobook was simple enough in regards to installation from GitHub, and it works surprisingly well. Everything is built into it. There are several voice models to choose from, and there are ways to use GPU or CPU to make things faster. Sadly, the GPU that I'm using is not supported, but there are many other options for that as well. Other than the voice, I left most of the settings as standard. Running from CPU, it does take a significant amount of time to complete, and pretty much just leaves the CPU maxed out the entire time. but it works. The end product is listenable, especially if you like the old style of audiobook where it is bland and straightforward of a reading as possible. No inflection changes for different voices, etc., etc. But it is acceptable so long as you don't crank the speed up too high. That's, unless you guys got any questions or anything, that's mostly what I've been up to.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about all the way back to the beginning. You was talking about getting jellyfin in place as kind of a hedge, I guess, because I mean we've been following Plex for a while now and not really liking the direction that they've been going,
Yeah.
and it seems like every step they take takes people like us further away. And did you manage to get hardware
There was a
acceleration working?
no, because I don't have a graphics card on the machine that it's on, so I
Well, I
didn't see
mean
the point.
you do if you've
Well,
got it system on a chip.
APU, yeah.
Yeah, because that still makes a difference when
Okay, I will try and set that up for next time. I was going to discuss some of the jellyfin migration stuff that I'm doing right now on the next set of wanderings.
right.
So, but yeah, I'll work on that too, getting the hardware acceleration for an APU.
It's basically a matter of just in the Docker Compose to give it access. Well, you're binding the folder where the video card is enumerated. You're binding that to the same folder in the container. That way, it's got access to the
I
hardware.
wonder what the difference is for an LXC.
Oh, is that what you're doing?
I'm not running the Docker version.
Hmm.
Well, I am. No, I'm running bare bones on one and LXC on the other. So
In that case, you are well and truly outside of the realm of my expertise.
yeah,
Not that it can't be done. I just don't know.
I'm sure that there are ways to do it, and
And
I will start my research on that.
yeah, it really makes a difference if you're going to use it a lot. To just go ahead and use whatever, because I don't have a video card in the server that's running mine, but it's got an Intel Xeon, which has got QuickSync, and QuickSync is just the technology that Jellyfin will use to access the video card, and it makes a heck of a difference in especially if the server has to do any transcoding or anything like that.
Multiple transcodes at the
Yeah,
same time.
yeah, it makes a heck of a difference. So I approve this message.
I've never given 1 second of thought to transcoding. I use Plex and Jellyfin, and it doesn't matter how big, even a 50 gigabyte Blu-ray rip, it just comes right over my network to my Fire TV, never stutters.
Would it
I
all
don't.
matter? What happens is it's more to do with the client side, what the client can decode on its
Handle.
own.
Yeah.
And if it's a Fire TV, the Fire Sticks can decode almost everything, as far as I'm aware. There's a chart. There's actually a chart on the Jellyfin setup guide where it tells you, it breaks it down by each, Firefox, Chrome, Fire Stick, Roku stick, all these things. And every single one of them has stuff that it will do and won't do. It looks like the codec, if you want to put something on there that's going to work on everything, you want MP4 container, because some things, I think Firefox won't do a MKV container or something. I might have that wrong. MP4 container with the H.264 video codec and the AC3 or Dolby Digital audio codec, and everything out there can hardware accelerate the hell out of that. So when I'm running stuff through Handbrake, like I've got some discs I was making breaking today. I just got it set up to rip it with Make MKV, and I use all of those. They're probably not the most efficient or the most modern, but they're the ones that will work without any transcoding pretty much everywhere. So I stick with the old-fashioned way of doing it. Plex, as far as I know, what is it? You got to have the paid version of Plex to have any kind of hardware acceleration whatsoever.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
and you got to have that in order to have remote access to it as well,
Correct.
which unless you're doing your own DNS or whatever, you know. But if I'm going to go do that kind of trouble, I'm going to use something like Jellyfin. That way yeah. So, yeah, I think as time goes on, most people are getting more and more fed up with Plex and the direction that they take.
Yeah, I understand wanting a monthly income, but it kind of feels like even the people that, paid for the lifetime subscription or the lifetime Plex pass are eventually going to get screwed over because Plex wants more money.
Yeah, I mean there just doesn't seem to be any such thing as a lifetime subscription to anything. You know, they can rip that rug right out from under you anytime they want.
Yep.
You know, they can say, well, I guess we never planned on the whole thing lasting this long, or whatever it is they
Right.
say as an explanation. But
Well, in the past, the lifetime pass or even the monthly pass, it felt like a donation.
yeah.
Now it doesn't.
All right. Well, hey, Jim, what you got?
Yeah, I had several issues that I've had hanging over my head for months or even years that I wanted to try to get resolved. So this is a mixed grab bag of hardware and software issues. The first thing I did was I went out and bought some Ethernet cables. I know this isn't a exciting topic, but for the last year and a half since I moved into this house where I currently live, I just decided to see if I can get away without having to string the Ethernet cables around my office here where I'm sitting. Just a little less, getting down on my hands and knees. It didn't help that the Ethernet cables that I have were like a decades old mixed bag of like blue and yellow and white, and some of them had like sticky tape residue and stuff on them. So I lived without it for all this time. But I said, well, how much could it cost? I finally went online and I bought 3 10-foot new black Ethernet cables for $5 a piece and a 25-foot cable for $7. And I, connected my 3 primary desktops and my 1 primary laptop that I'm sitting in front of right at this very moment to my AT&T, fiber gateway. Just to knock that off. My back and my knees weren't happy about getting down on the ground and, trying to fish them around behind all the other spaghetti wires I have dangling down back there. But I got it done, and, and I'm happy about that. However, for day-to-day surfing, I don't think it matters much. The Wi-Fi is fine, but if you're downloading massive files or transferring like, huge files over your local intranet, it does matter. It's a lot
making
faster.
Podcasts.
Yeah, like for example, if I rip a Blu-ray, if it's 50 or 80 gigs and I want to send it over to the other computer there, 50 or 80 gigs takes a lot longer on the Wi-Fi. Regular surfing is just fine. However, there's one hitch. I don't know why this is, but on my main laptop that I'm sitting in front of right now, Mint 22.3, the Ethernet connection does not connect. I don't know why. You would think that would be the easiest thing, right? You just plug it in and you just connect. But for some reason, it's giving me a connection error. My other 3 computers, no problem, So I can't explain that. I posted on the Linux Mint forum. I haven't got an answer yet. I might have to try elsewhere. It's just a weird problem.
Did you try going into the terminal and just type DHCP CD? Isn't that the command that restart the DHCP server or whatever?
Yeah,
client?
because it will give you a different IP address.
Yeah, well, I mean, if that's important. What machine are we talking about here?
The Linux Mint 22.3 laptop that I'm sitting in front of talking to you on right now.
Does that also hold your Jellyfin server?
No. My Jellyfin server is over here and the media desktop to my right.
That you just wired to
I wired them all. I wired.
Okay. then your IP address on your Jellyfin box changed.
Okay, we're just two separate things we're talking about, Joe. First, my laptop isn't connecting here at all.
Yeah,
like when you plug it in, it gives me a connection error. So I have to just close that down and go back to Wi-Fi, which is the connection
I was reading
I'm
ahead.
using.
My fault.
Separate issue, which I haven't got to yet, is on my media desktop to my right. That one, the connection's fine in general, but just this one weird quirk, the Jellyfin like web interface, that it's no longer working. It's like it thinks the network changed or something.
It did.
Yeah. Well, okay, but the Plex one didn't change. That works.
But Plex is accessible from Plex.tv.
Yeah, Plex is doing some other magic to make itself known to the rest of the for Jellyfin. You got to know, unless you've got some kind of, what do they call that service, Avahi or whatever.
It's a DNS.
Yeah, to announce the
local DNS.
Yeah, to announce where it's at. The golden rule, as far as I'm concerned, for any machine that is going to run any server side services is to set up a static IP address.
But the problem with that is when you switch interfaces, then it sees it as a new device and it will give it a new MAC address, which then gives it a new IP address. So then you have to go and fix your static IP so that it's at the new location.
Use a static IP that is within the namespace of your subnet, but outside of the range of the DHCP server of the router. So in other words, if you're using 192.168.1 blah 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 /24, and your DHCP server is set up to give you addresses between the namespace of .100 through .199, you still have 56 more IP addresses beyond that you can use that the DHCP server will not try to address. It'll just never even touch them. Like I've got this machine here is using 192.168.1 202, 203, 204, and that way they can hold on to those static IPs, and the DHCP on the router will never even try to use those addresses. That a little bit of above and beyond right there, because you get with a /24, you have access to all the way up to 256, I think, but usually the router is only set up to use between 100 and 199. Right.
But like you're connected over Wi-Fi, and so the IP address is allocated, and then you connect the Ethernet cable. The IP address that you want is already allocated, so it can't give it to you again on the new port until you either restart the router or reset the static IP.
Okay, so perhaps in the Jellyfin interface, I can change something.
Right, but it sounds like your Ethernet on your laptop might be messed up.
But that doesn't work at all. Oh, you mean like physically, the physical port?
Yes, yes.
Maybe it does give some kind of. It used to work. I know that it does give some kind of message, some kind of error message.
Do you have a docking station or anything like that you can hook up to? USB, Ethernet, anything like that? Just for a test.
You mean with Ethernet?
Yeah, USB Ethernet.
I don't have an Ethernet port on a docking station. No.
I would plug it in and find out what the IP address of the machine is, and then just try to ping that IP address from another machine just to see if it's actually resolving on the home network at all.
For testing purposes, do you have another router, either portable or not portable, just an old router sitting around?
I have a router separate from my ATT Wi-Fi gateway, which is a combined modem, router, Wi-Fi gateway. Yeah.
Right. Well, I'm just saying, don't have it hooked up to anything else. Just hook it up to that router and see if you can access the interface 192.168.1.1.
Run that baby directly to the modem. No
Yeah.
router, no firewall.
Okay. Well,
Like
that's
a crazy person.
all right. There's some things I have to try, but yeah, the small annoyance. I thought I was doing something very simple, and now I have two problems to solve, as it often goes, two steps forward and one step back, or sometimes one step forward and two steps back. In this case, hopefully, I will be able to solve those two things.
I mean,
But
Joe's right. Ethernet ports on, is it a laptop?
yeah,
Yeah, Ethernet ports go out about as often as anything else. They get, especially when they never get used, and they get all corroded in there. And
Or it could be the cable. Maybe you got one bad one.
that's
the what?
The cable,
cable.
the Ethernet
The
cable.
Oh, yeah. I should switch cable. I mean, I doubt it. It's a brand new cable, but yeah, I could try just to eliminate that as an issue, just in case, the unlikely chance the cable's bad. So yeah, I definitely have some things to follow up on. So
Oh, I had some brand new cables that never got. They weren't brand new. They were brand new, and then I put them away in a container, and then 10 years later, I pull them out and try to use them. Well, they sat in that, folded up, and then when they sat for as long as they did, they, I don't know, dry rotted or whatever on the inside. You straighten them out, and they crumble on the inside,
Right.
and you never know it till you plug them in.
Right.
So
Okay, well, I'll have to experiment and try to figure those two things out. But yeah, I started the last couple of weeks trying to solve a bunch of issues. Some of them I did, some I didn't. Some I have yet. They're going to be ongoing problems. So my Ethernet cables, maybe you'll get an update on the next show. I'll move on to the next thing that I was trying to solve. More hardware woes. So I've talked about how I frequently rip Blu-ray discs that I borrow from the library. And I've been doing it on my laptop because on the laptop, the very one I'm sitting in front of, I have a Blu-ray drive in there, and it's become annoying because I went through the effort of getting Make MKV and VLC working, and it works perfectly, right? I can play a Blu-ray drive, play a Blu-ray disc on this built-in Matchita drive on this laptop. I could use Make MKV, which I love, and it perfectly rips it. Great. There were some steps I had to do to follow it up. If you look at the show notes, there's a link to a article from OMG Ubuntu that explains how to do it. It worked perfectly on my laptop. However, I'm tired of doing it here on my laptop because what that means is I have to temporarily store this, 30, 50, 80 gig, whatever it is, data dump from the Blu-ray, and then send it over my network to my other desktop, next to me, because that's where my, new 4 terabyte drive is that contains all my mainstream movies and TV shows, and that's where my Plex and Jellyfin servers are. So I said, well, I actually have another Blu-ray drive. It's in this media desktop, this Dell computer from 2016. How come it doesn't work? I look in disks, it doesn't show up, right? So I booted, it's one of my last computers that still has Windows on the Spinning Russ hard drive. So I booted into Windows to see if Windows would recognize the Pioneer Blu-ray, the 5.25-inch internal Blu-ray drive that I've had there for like nearly 15 years. Windows didn't recognize it either. So I said, okay, now I got to get down on my hands and knees. Once again, I'm going to, unplug everything, move the desktop over to somewhere I could, access it, take it apart, clean the dust out, and let me just see what's going on in there. Maybe one of the cables came loose. So that's what I did. I unseated and reseated the power connection that was in series with the DVD drive just above it, and unseated and reseated the data cable connection to the motherboard. And let me just see. Maybe it got loose. Sure enough, that did it. So I boot back into Linux Mint, and it works. So I'm so happy because I'm like, well, problem solved, right? Uh, Success. Unfortunately, that's not the case because when I got 4 new Blu-rays from the library once by coincidence. So I'm like, okay, I need to rip these. I'm not going to have time to watch these all in the next week. So, I go into Make MKV and I use the software button to eject, to open the drive. Because unfortunately, the way the case is, the plastic bezel covers the physical hardware button. So I always have to use the software button, either in Make MKV or in VLC or in disks to eject, open the tray. That
I
works.
do that too. I do that too.
Yeah,
And I don't need to, but I do it because I don't trust the button on that thing. And it
yeah,
is
yeah.
kind of hard. They do get covered by anything, or
Right.
they'll just stop working. Yeah.
So so I put each of the 4 Blu-rays in, and they're not working. It's not reading the disc. Then I remembered, oh, wait a minute. I remembered, last year I had to follow the tips in this article and install a couple of small libraries in the terminal and link something. It's in the article how to do it. And it worked on my laptop. So it should work here. So I did that, and it still doesn't work. And I'm like, oh, here we go. This is uh, uh, this is not working. I'm sorry. I kind of skipped ahead. Like, so what I did was I actually ordered a new Blu-ray drive. I skipped this part. The old Pioneer drive that was in there was dead, right? Because it physically, I went to put in one of the open it up again, and what happened was I heard a grinding sound, and I realized, it's stuck. Right, the plastic tray mechanism would not open, even though I'm hitting the software button and Make MKV and VLC. It was going crunk, So I'm like, well, I'm lucky I didn't get one of the library discs stuck in there and trapping it in there. But the drive now, which was a Pioneer, the one I've had for 15 years, is stuck. So it's useless now. I can't use it. It won't open up. So I went online, and the part I skipped explaining just now was that I had to purchase a new, internal Blu-ray drive. And you may or may not realize they don't make them anymore, right? You've got 3 choices. If you go on like Amazon or eBay, you can buy an external, like cheapy $30-$40 Blu-ray drive to connect to your computer. You could buy some specialized, very expensive $200 or $300 Blu-ray drive for for your desktop, or more commonly, you can buy a used drive, right? And so that's what I did. I spent $50 on a a Dell OEM open box drive.
Or you could get a hold of Bill and have him mail one of the 6 of them I've got stacked up over there on the shelf.
Or you could, get out a screwdriver and take apart your broken one and fix it.
I mean, are you really going to?
ThinkLikeJoe.com.
Yeah. The way you're fixing your headphones. I mean, are you really going to trust it after that? I mean, to open up, I could just see one of the discs getting trapped in there.
And then you open it up with a screwdriver,
yeah,
and pull the disc out.
Ain't nobody got no time for all that.
I mean, I just didn't trust it, right? I tried to win an auction for like $30-something. I lost the auction. I got frustrated. I was just like, screw it. I'm just going to hit the buy it now button from this other one, because this guy sold these Dell OEM. It might be called Highlight brand. It's labeled HLDT. It's the same ones that came with a new Dell computer, So I'm like, fine, I'll spend the $50, whatever. And I put it in, I connected it. It showed up, and I think it was going to work. And then jumping ahead back to where I left off in this story. So it should work. I did all the same things I did, following those tips in the OMG Ubuntu article, but it doesn't read the discs, right? Even though I spent $50 on this drive, it's not working. So I don't know exactly what it's going to be. I'm going to have to, if it's a hardware issue that it just won't work at all, it's a software issue or some DRM workaround thing that I'm going to have to do. But at the moment. I'm seeing. Wow, you got some Amazon on the screen here. Okay,
There's
yeah,
a
you're
bunch of
looking.
them on here, dude.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
There's drives. They're used drives for notebooks. I had to make
these
sure I
are
didn't.
about looks like between $60-$70 for most of these. Blu-ray burner. This one's a burner,
Yeah.
Blu-ray burner for $62.99.
But
Is that a
those
note?
are laptop ones, is
Yeah,
what
those
they
are
look like.
laptop ones. You
Oh,
got to
you need
buy.
You'd
it.
also have to go
Oh,
and
you
get an
need a.
adapter for
Yes,
them.
this is a desktop that I have over here.
I know
So I
what
need the.
Yeah, I was thinking wrong because the last desktop I had before I built this one it actually had a slot for a laptop digital drive, which surprised me. But then I forgot that that's not how they used to work. No, you're right. They don't make those big ones anymore. I don't know if they ever did make big laptop drives.
Yeah, well,
It's not
this
for
is
a
a desk.
laptop; it's for a desktop.
I
It's a
mean, not
desktop.
big
You need
desktop drive. Sorry, yeah,
the 5.25 inch, you know, uh, slot. Just like the old DVD/CD
yeah.
drives. I actually have a DVD CD drive in this same Dell desktop that's 15, or actually it's more like 10 years old. But I had this Blu-ray drive because I had it in a different computer before. I mean, it worked. It used to work. It worked under Windows. I don't know why it's stuck. I don't really trust the fact that I'm going to physically take it apart and get the tray mechanism to work. Once it's stuck, I don't trust it anymore. So, in any case, yeah, I got a new drive.
Well, I can tell you what it is.
Oh, yeah, what's that?
You let it sit for a long time, right?
Yeah, well, a couple
Okay,
years,
so
a long time.
yeah, there's these little like rubber belts on the inside. They dry out. They lose their shape. One of those snapped.
It
I thought they
opened
were
and
all gear
closed
driven.
four times, and I thought it was
It is
good. But
geared.
then on the fifth time, right after I had pulled the fourth, library disc out, that's when it got stuck. I was like, what luck,
It is gear driven, but there's also a belt.
Well, I mean, I mostly just use. I've got two of these USB ones, and it's fine. You don't get quite the speed as you would hooked directly to SATA when it's through the USB.
I'm sure that they make, high speed USB-C ones now or Thunderbolt ones now.
They might, yeah. I don't know. It's
But do you
just
really need those speeds?
not really. I mean, what are we doing? We're
I'm not
ripping a
going to pay the
Blu-ray.
extra for those kind of speeds.
I mean, even watching a Blu-ray. Now, what I want, what I'd like to have, but it's way down the list, is an 4K Blu-ray, what do they call it? UHD Blu-ray drive, which Make MKV will work with them, but you've got to have the higher
Right.
price drive and I don't have one of those. But and the reason it's so far down the list of priorities is because I would just recode it into 1080p before I put it on my Jellyfin anyway, because in my opinion 4K is a gimmick, a joke, and it's not very shareable, and it's certainly not near as easy to stream remotely from your Jellyfin because it's just so many more bits to push over the internet. So
Yeah, my library actually, where I borrow the Blu-rays from, they actually have surprisingly some titles in 4K Blu-ray. Now, I don't actually have a drive either. I've got the set top, the regular
yeah,
Blu-ray that I bought cheap, like $50, or $40, and that uses Blu-ray and DVD. I didn't bother getting the set top 4K drive, even though I have access to the disc. Maybe I'll upgrade at some point, but I just want the internal drive to work in this desktop.
I have to wonder if your Blu-ray
isn't there a
player.
caddy you could get to where you could like? Because I know
Yes.
there's caddies where you can put a hard drive in where an optical drive used to be. I've got lots of those, but is
Yeah.
there a caddy where you can install a laptop optical
Yes.
drive into
Perhaps.
the hardware, and it just would look
Oh,
it would look normal.
you can get a USB-C or a USB one. You can convert them to an external. I've seen that. I have not seen converting them to an internal to
Well, yeah, that's what these
a desktop.
all this is is a laptop disk drive inside of a case.
Converter, yeah.
Right.
And it's got some hardware in the back here that's plugging directly into the SATA port on the drive. I could shuck it out of there and I have done that with other ones before and put that in a laptop, because it's just, you're just moving from one protocol to another is all.
I suppose you could strip that down and just use the SATA adapter that's in there, because it is SATA, but it's proprietary like sizing usually for the laptop ones. So if you have the adapter, then yeah, I don't see why you couldn't hook it up to SATA inside a desktop.
Thing I don't like is I built this machine with a like a gaming PC tower that I bought, and these towers don't have a place for an optical drive whatsoever. That's just not a thing, or at least the two that I bought didn't have them. Because I do still like to have a optical drive for, copying viewable Linux ISOs.
The 5.25 drive slot is actually useful, even if you just want to use it for like a USB hub or something.
Yeah.
But you don't see it in a lot of modern computers because nobody's really using disk drives anymore. So
Yeah, these just flat out don't have it.
Yeah. I mean, this is a 10-year-old desktop. All my computer, and it's my newest computer, as I've said. One of the reasons I switched to Linux was to keep using the multiple computers and peripherals I had and not spend money. Because in the past, I've spent a lot of money, like high end, best of everything, top dollar, to get to where I have now, and I'm determined to get my money's worth. At least I think I got a few
Stretch
more
that
good
out
years.
as far as it can go.
Yeah, I've got a
Now,
few.
These
more
have it. These have one up here in a server. What good is that?
So yeah. So the upshot is, yes, I got the new Blu-ray. It so far I can't get it to read any discs. So now I'm back again. It's an ongoing project. I'm posting on the Make MKV forum to see if there's some help I can get. Where
is your user in the optical group? Because that's a problem I ran into on Arch. Nothing worked. I'm trying everything. I can't even get it to see the disc in this thing. It's just it's as though there's not even an optical drive hooked up, but yet mechanically this thing's working. Then I found, like, buried somewhere before I was using AI or anything like that, I found make sure that you add your user to the optical group. Otherwise, you will have no access to anything on an optical drive. So it's possible if Mint was installed. This is very improbable, but it's possible if it was installed on the machine didn't have any optical drives on it, that you might not be in the optical group and it might not work. So
it was working with the previous optical drive.
Yeah, I don't know.
I know you mentioned it already, but yeah, it very well could be a DRM issue with that particular drive because it's an older drive. So,
or maybe it's not old enough.
And Make MKV won't care one iota about DRM.
So yeah, I posted on the Make MKV forum. I'm hoping someone could give me some advice, because it did have some information about Libre Drive, and I was reading on the forum there might be a way around it to get this to work. I hope I don't have to go spend $30 to $50 on a different brand, like another Pioneer or whatever drive.
When you think about it, run the command groups and then your username and see what names of what groups pop up. And if optical isn't on there, then just gpassword tech your username and then the optical group, and see if that fixes it, because that's what did it for me.
Right.
All right. That might just be an Arch thing, but yeah, I definitely have to follow up on that, and hopefully I can get it working.
Right on.
All right, so I'll move on to my next thing. I've had this issue with the laptop I'm sitting in front of. You remember last year I mentioned I ran out of space. I had a 120 gigabyte drive, one of the two original drives in this laptop that I had bought new in 2012. And when I cleared one of them out and put Mint on there, eventually I ran out of space on the drive. That's just my data, my emails, my whatever. It just, it's not a big drive. And eventually I just ran out of space. So when I was going to upgrade to Mint 22 from Mint 21, I had to just bite the bullet and do a fresh install. I purchased a 250 gig drive and I put Mint 22. I'm now up to 22.3, which is the latest, and that's working fine. The problem is the other drive. I pulled out the drive that had Windows on there. There were two drives. There was 120 gig drive with Windows, and then there was the 120 gig drive with Mint 21.3. I put the new drive in, pulled the Windows drive out. But the problem is the boot sequence was still relying on the Mint 21.3 120 gig drive. They were handcuffed together, right? I could never wipe that drive, otherwise my computer wouldn't boot anymore. So again, I was living with this for a year or so, and it annoyed me because I know I wanted to do something else with that other old Mint drive. I've got all the data off there. I'm living and using the bigger drive with Mint 22.3. So why should it be handcuffed to this other old version of Mint? So I have to credit the Linux Mint forum. I posted on there. I probably didn't explain it right, but you have to be savvy enough to parse the advice people give you, because several people gave me advice in the thread that were like wacky, weird end run solutions that probably wouldn't have worked for me or would have been way more trouble than I ever wanted to bother with. But then one person gave me advice that like looked right on the money. He actually understood what I was saying, and thankfully I didn't even have to go boot up into a live USB or anything. I was able to, update Grub. I did it wrong first on the wrong drive, but eventually I got it solved, and thankfully and I proved it by pulling out the old Mint drive physically and making sure that I could boot up onto the
Was
Mint.
it just the EFI system partition on the old drive, and you needed to move that over?
I don't think it was EFI. It was just Grub.
Because that'll do it if it's looking for the. Because when you're making these partitions, they get flagged, and sometimes if you're dual booting, especially, sometimes it shares the EFI system partition with Windows, which that can be problematic by itself. But then you start adding drives, and you say, okay, I want to put Windows on this drive and Linux on this drive, and then the system, when you're installing it, puts the EFI stuff over on the old drive, and you want to get rid of that. You no longer have a bootable machine.
Yeah, it was no problem when I removed the Windows drive, because Linux Mint, which came after Windows, the original Linux Mint, that had the boot sequence on it.
Okay.
But when I installed the new drive and put the new fresh install of Mint 22, that one was still handcuffed to the other one. And yeah, updating, it was like sudo update grub, or sudo grub and /dev/sda. I had to do something like that, and it worked. So I'm happy about the Linux Mint forum. I was able to get the answer to that and, separate those two things. I proved it. I pulled the old drive out and it booted. So I'm good. So that was just another one of those things that was hanging over my head that just annoyed me, that I couldn't take anymore. And
people knowing how to explain things, that is a skill.
Yeah.
It really, really is. And I think it was Einstein that said, you don't truly know anything unless you can explain it to a 6-year-old. Because a lot of people, I don't know if it's poor people skills or people just like to show off their prowess or whatever. I don't know. But you ask a question and you clearly don't possess all of the language skills that go along with this thing you're trying to fix. You clearly don't know as much about what you're talking about as what they might, but yet they'll answer you with all of this
Right. That was exactly
technical.
the case. Yeah. So credit to that guy. So yes, another problem off the checklist. Even though I've added more problems as I'm going, at least that one was off the checklist.
Right.
And all right, so next, let's go back to hardware. All right, hardware woes again. So I have this physically gigantic, custom-built desktop that I had an acquaintance of mine build in 2011. That's my oldest computer, right? It's got an Intel Core i7 950 with 8 cores. It has a large, when I say large, I mean physically large GeForce GTX 580 graphics card. I had this machine built, I think with Windows 7 at the time, if that was what was current in 2011, for about $2,500, right? It's as a video editing computer when I used to use Adobe Premiere Pro. This is before the subscription service. And it was top of the line, everything. It's got a whole bunch of connections in back. It's got 2 eSATA connections. It's got a whole bunch of USB, 2.0 and a few USB 3.0 connections. I have a FireWire. It has a one FireWire connect 800 and I also have FireWire 400 connections built in. I have all kinds of connections on the back, and it's just like gigantic. The kind of thing where, you'd see some gamer have this huge, overly sized, tower desktop to put their gigantic
professional workstation type.
Yeah. It barely fits under my glass desk here. But anyway, I never really talked about it much since I joined this show because for the last year and a half or so, it was not acting right. When I'd go to boot it up and it would go beep, 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 like a truck backing up, something was wrong with it. Sometimes it would boot. Other times it wouldn't, right? And this computer, it used to work. I used to have Windows in it. Then I put a second SSD and I had Linux Mint in it, and I could dual boot between the two of them by, hitting the key as it booted and, going into the BIOS if I wanted, but I only used to occasionally use it for Linux, but I couldn't really use it because it wouldn't boot reliably. So that was another thing hanging over my head and I wanted to fix it. So it dawned on me, hey, wait a minute. So what I used to do sometimes, because again, I moved a year and a half ago, I thought maybe the RAM chips had come loose or had dust caked on them or something. I would take them out, these big heavy RAM chips and four gig RAM chips. And, I'd blow the dust off. And at this point they were clean, but I'd reseat them in there properly, make sure they weren't, crooked or anything. And then it would boot like once and then it would go back to beeping. So, so now newly motivated after ignoring it for a year and a half, I said, well, wait a minute. Do RAM chips go bad? Is that a thing? I think they do. I see Joe shaking his head. Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, let me pull 2 of them out and just leave
or the
2
controller that they're connected to.
And I had to do like 3 different combinations to find one that worked. I'm like, aha! Now it booted up a half a dozen times, no problem. So okay, these 2 are good. Let's see of the other 2. I'd put one in, and even with 3 of them, it would boot just fine. Mind you, it didn't add any RAM because they work in pairs, right? So it was 4 and 4 makes 8. The third one didn't add 4 more to make 12, but nonetheless, it booted up fine. As soon as I put the 4th one in, back to beeping. So that's the bad chip. I was able to isolate it. One of those chips went bad after 15 years. So I said, let me look online. It was some weird fancy brand, the kind of thing that a guy looking to build a cool, high-end system in 2011 would have bought, had flames on it. There's some ridiculous brand I never heard of, but whatever it was like, probably a top-end, RAM chips at the time. So I went on eBay and sure, I found 2 of them. They sell them in pairs, $14. I said, okay, you know what? I'll buy used. I'll buy 2 used, 4 gigabyte RAM chips of the same brand, exact model number and everything, because I wanted it to match, right? So I felt safer that way, and it was cheap.
DDR3 or DDR2?
DDR3, yeah, 2011. Remember,
I can't find anything anywhere near that cheap. I bought some DDR3. last year, and they were about $128
Oh,
a
really?
stick. Of course, they were
Yeah.
ECC RAM, but still,
Right, exactly. You weren't going for desktop RAM, you were
no,
going for server RAM.
yeah, crap, $14.
So yeah, so $14. They came a few days later from eBay, and I had a little bit of a confounding issue was the sticker was printed on the other side. These ones were from 2014, where mine were from 2011. I don't know. They stuck the sticker on the opposite side, so I was trying to figure out how to put them in the slot. I thought they should be on the same side, but turned out they go on the opposite side. So they wouldn't fit in the other way. And then I also had to figure out which slots they had to go in, because I guess the way this motherboard works, it prefers it to be in 1, 2. I don't know what the actual numbers are, but looking at it from the left, it should be on the 4 leftmost. You can't start in the middle and go to the right. For whatever reason, I had to slot them in a few different ways, but eventually I got them in there, and now it works fine. And I have one extra one now in case one of them goes bad, because I bought a pair after only one died. So now I've got 16 gigs. I've got this big giant, former top of the line video editing system working. And
But you said it's a Core i7 950. Does that mean that is a first generation i7?
it's from 2011. So would that be the
I guess, yeah, because I've never seen them in 3-digit numbers before.
yeah.
So that's an oldie but a good. 8 cores. Is that with threads?
I believe
Probably
so.
doesn't even have hyper threading, does it? It that old probably.
At the time, it was the best, because I remember that we went through the parts list, and I had a very enthusiastic, guy who was pretty knowledgeable, even more than I was at the time. Go over the parts list. I think we ordered everything from Newegg, and he spent a day putting it all together. And and it served its purpose at the time. I mean, I was editing HD video, and like I needed to. Of course, now it's a older system, but still, it's more than enough to do what to keep using it for some purpose. So I'm going to just briefly talk about something else. Hardware related. It seems like every time I turn around, I need to replace a battery in one of my 6 uninterruptible power supply / surge protectors. I've got 5 big heavy ones, APC battery backup, UPS 1500, and anytime the power dips, even like for a half a second here in Florida, there's a risk of suddenly the battery, which was working fine, now is blinking like it's dying, or actually clicking. It makes like an audible clicking sound. And, because I have 5 of these big ones and 1 smaller battery backup, which you need here in Florida because the lightning, and even on a sunny day, the power could just dip. Like just briefly, you'd be sitting here eating dinner, and like you see the lights flash and go dark for like a second. I'm like, unless you want everything your computer and everything to turn off, hard drive stop, and your TV and streaming to die, you have to have these. So, yeah, $55 down the drain. I'm good for at least one a year at this point, I think.
Yeah, my UPS has saved me the other day when we had the storms rolling through. So kept my mini rack running and kept my router and modem running. So
I get about a half an hour, realistically, honestly, because everything that's sitting here is plugged into this one 2500 watt. It's 2500 watt, but it's
a big boy, but you're still running big things on it.
Right.
Then there's a small one over there that the modem coming in that takes the whatever they call it, that takes the fiber and turns it into Ethernet. I call it a modem, but I guess there's another word for it. It's got its own over there, and that actually I'd probably get an hour out of that because it's only got the one thing plugged into it.
Yeah, I rarely need it for more than like 30 seconds while the power's out. It's just I don't want it to go down and mess up my hardware. And
especially servers. I mean, I just wanted it to be able to give me time to shut everything down elegantly when it happens, and I've got some Nagios stuff running to let me know if I'm paying attention.
Yeah, the
So,
reason, in my opinion, to have multiple, like, small, like mine's the 1500 series, smaller than yours, is because you need that amount of plugs. It's not just about the size of the battery, but if you got enough computers, enough devices, enough monitors, you need that many plugs to plug
yeah,
everything
that's
in.
true.
So, and the two L-shaped desks, also like they're spread out quite a bit. So, it's too hard to have everything plugged into one or two big giant battery backups. But anyway, that's just a par for the course. So back to that what I'm calling my tower, right? This big custom built tower computer. So part of the reason I'm glad I figured it out. It's another thing off my checklist. I was like hanging over my head. I got that fixed. So what did I do with the tower? So after my recent discussion on Linux OTC about my frustration with Ghost BSD, the upgrade process on the little, lightweight Celeron desktop is because I won't rehash it, but effectively because I did an upgrade for a major, point, release upgrade, ZFS filled up the whole tiny little 64 gigabyte hard drive, almost the entirety of it, made it useless. And because their requirements increased, the new version of Ghost BSD requires 8 gigabytes of RAM, not 4, which is what this little Celeron that I picked up off Craigslist for $20 as an experimental computer uses. So that's out of the Ghost BSD business. But I've got this other big tower computer that has 16 gigabytes of RAM. It's got a 240 gigabyte hard drive, so quadruple the RAM, quadruple the drive space. Even though it's 15 years old, it's more than capable of running, Linux Mint or Ghost BSD. So that's what I did. I ended up putting Ghost BSD on that drive. That's now my Ghost BSD drive. And, so I do have to spend some time just like doing a fresh install, putting in, all my software again and tweaking all the settings. That's going to take some time, but at least this computer is now capable of running it. I also have Linux Mint 22.3 on the other internal drive there. If I want to switch back to it for whatever reason, I can interrupt the boot process with the F2 key and, switch that way. So I'm happy about that. That's something I'm going to spend some time with, getting back to where I was before. I also took the opportunity, speaking of Ghost BSD, since I freed the shackles on my laptop that I'm sitting in front of from the old Linux Mint, which is now erased, I put Ghost BSD here on the 120 gigabyte drive on this laptop with 24 gigs of RAM. So if I want to use it, I can interrupt the boot process, boot there, and I can use it here on my laptop. Now, as a general rule, I do not like the idea of dual booting. It's just too much hassle to reboot and have all your programs come back and set it's just way too much hassle. But there's an exception to be made because I have this sophisticated, camera mounted a certain way. I've got the microphone that you're seeing here in the shot. Everything's set up on this computer. So if I wanted to do something with the camera or a podcast, I really have to do it here. It's too much hassle to try to point the camera elsewhere and change lenses and everything. So, I've got now Ghost BSD on 2 more powerful computers. So happy about that. I did discover something I complained about on Mate desktop environment. I was playing around with the settings, and the version of Mate that comes with Ghost BSD, I did not realize that there's a setting under look and feel, station tweak, interface, panels. You can choose a panel option called Windowy, which is obviously just what it sounds like. It's a setup that looks a lot more like Windows. And unlike the traditional Mate setup, if you hit the super key, it acts as a launcher, just like on Windows or just like on Cinnamon. To me, that is the limbo bar for every desktop environment that has to pass for me to even consider it usable. if that doesn't work, you have to make it work. Otherwise, I can't deal with a desktop environment. So I now consider Mate at least moderately usable because now it actually has that same functionality. And it's not exactly like Cinnamon, of course. It's still Mate. If for example, if you take your mouse and hover over what the equivalent of the start button, the all the different program categories don't fly out like they do on Windows or on Cinnamon. But that
Is it the
aside,
brisk menu, or is it just the default Mate menu or whatever?
no, brisk. I don't think Mate has a brisk menu, right? That's an XFCE thing.
No, that's Whisker menu.
Oh, you're right. You're right. I confused the two. You know what? I haven't figured out how to apply the brisk menu to Mate yet. I don't know how to do it.
There's a few for I know there's a Mint one that Linux Mint or Mate comes with, the Mint menu. That one's pretty good. It's been around a while. But then the brisk menu, I think they made that over at the Solus project.
Mhm.
I want to say that could have been an Ike Doherty project. I'm not sure, but it's a lot more like the Whisker menu has always been, which is basically the Windows 7 menu that everybody knows and loves. But
Right.
I think, if I don't have the if I can't just hit the super button and start typing what I need to run, then I it's an unusable desktop to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I have many years of muscle memory built up to do that. I do use a launcher in my case, not to get sidetracked, but I use a launcher called Albert. I used to use one called Kupfer. But for me, I have the launcher not open up applications. I use it to open documents or folders. So I use the super key as the left super key as an application launcher, and I turn that functionality off in Albert. Rofi, same idea. Whatever launcher you use, I have that only do folders. So if I want to get to one of the folders deep buried in one of my external drives containing documents or videos or photos or games or whatever, I hit Control Spacebar and start typing, and it only searches through the document. So I like having those functions separate. I'll have to try to see if I can figure out how to get the brisk menu working in Mate, but at least the windowy function panel does work in the meantime. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Bitten says go to the terminal and type package install pkg install brisk dash menu. Is that the terminal package manager for GhostBSD PKG? Is that what that is?
Yes, and there's also a software station, if you prefer, a GUI that you could use instead.
Right.
All right, good. So last thing on that leaves that Celeron desktop, the very lightweight one I told you was my $20 purchase that I used to have GhostBSD on. It's only got 4 gigs of RAM. It's got a little small 64 gigabyte. It's an SSD, right? But it's a small drive. So that was the desktop sitting to my left that I had as an experimental desktop that I could just do whatever I wanted with, put something on just to try it out. Because again, not to get sidetracked, I hate when I see a YouTuber and they're installing something in a virtual machine. I don't want to see that. I don't want to see you struggling against the limits of your virtual machine if you're trying to show me how something works. If you're a YouTuber, just install it on bare metal. I can't really stand seeing.
Nobody does that.
Yeah, I mean, they should. Because it throws up another roadblock. I don't know if the thing you're using is not working or it's working awkwardly because you're trying to do it on a virtual machine. Don't tell me if you're a YouTuber that you don't have an extra cheap computer like this one I'm discussing right now to go, that you could use as a bare metal install. Anyway, so I've got this computer. So what can I do with it, right? It's got too little RAM and too small an SSD to, bother with GhostBSD anymore with ZFS. However, I was curious just to see what else I could put on there. That was like, let me go far down the ladder of obscurity, right? We've got Windows, we got Linux. then I went to Ghost BSD. How far down that ladder could I go and have a usable system that was not a major pain in the ass to set up? Right. So, just out of curiosity, I decided to try something called Open Indiana. And despite what the tagline at the top of the show said, I hate the name Open Indiana. I don't think it's cool or clever. I don't like it. But for those who don't know, Open Indiana is the most popular distro or distribution of Illumos. ILOUMOS. It's a Unix-like operating system derived from Open Solaris. So you're getting down into some like real niche, Unix-like operating systems. However, what I did find was on their website, they do have several different, ISOs you could download. Some of which, you have to install stuff through a TTY, but there's one that comes with a GUI desktop environment, Mate again. So I downloaded that one. It was actually a .USB format, which I'd never heard of. I guess it's like .ISO. But yeah, it was easy to download. It wasn't that big. Mint's USB image writer would not recognize it because it was .USB, not ISO. But I tried to burn it with something called UNetbootin, which I have installed on my laptop, which is a pretty neat program that often can install ISOs that are otherwise tricky to install.
It used to be the default one for Ubuntu, I think, was UNetbootin.
Yeah. But that didn't work either. But then
Etcher,
they
Balena
recommend. What's that?
Balena Etcher. That's
Balena. I don't even have that. Is that a Linux thing?
Yeah, I mean it's everything thing.
Right. Yeah, I haven't tried Balena Etcher in a while. However, they did recommend DD, right, which is done in the terminal. Now, so I just very carefully made sure that I knew what my drive letter was, because the risk of using DD is you overwrite one of your internal drive or external drives. If you got to make damn sure you use DD. You're going to know what drive letter your USB stick is. That's the number one risk.
Yeah,
right there. There's no GUI. You do it in the terminal, but I've done it a couple times, so I figured it out. The other thing is, with DD, you definitely want to use one of the options. I think it's called status equals control, or is it control equals status? It's one or the other. You have to use that because otherwise it just sits there and you have no idea. It doesn't show you like any
status
update
equals control,
as it's working. It could just sit there for 30 minutes and you're like, what, did it lock up? Is it working? So if you use the appropriate option, it will show you, something, progress. So yes, it worked. It booted. Then it was easy. It's just like any other, Linux distro. I was able to install it. It installed it looks like the FreeBSD installer, but it installed a full GUI Mate desktop. It came with Firefox, the new full Firefox, not the ESR, Thunderbird. It had Kaha, or is it pronounced Kaja, file manager, the Mate terminal, I have Mate image viewer, a whole bunch of those applications that you will typically find in a Mate desktop environment. And it's a working system, right? It connected immediately to, I had the wired Ethernet, the sound worked. I did try out the package manager. It uses something called image packaging system. And you have to use the terminal. It has one repository enabled by default. It has two optional repositories that are relatively easy to enable in the terminal, one of which is called encumbered, which is where you get some of your applications like VLC, which is behind a patent. Probably they don't want to include it by default. And then there's a third repository that has some third-party created stuff. In any case, it was relatively easy to do that, and very easy to install. any package you wanted through the terminal, and then if you wait about 30 seconds, I was waiting to see like what would happen. If I went back to the Mate desktop interface, sure enough, it placed it, right in the menu without me doing anything to intervene. So of course, when you're using a very, very niche operating system like this, the amount of packages are a lot less than you will find on Linux or even on FreeBSD. You're talking, an order of magnitude or 2 or 3 or 10 down. But I have to say, from what limited experience I have with it, it works. It had most of the basic stuff you need: browser, terminal, email, image viewer, video program.
NASA used to use this a lot, and until they really started going hard on Linux and a lot of the stuff that you've heard last few years. I used this some years back when I was first learning. I was first learning ZFS because it also, like BSD, installs on ZFS, and it was at the time I was told the best place to learn it, because Illumos, you can create these virtual blocks of data. Like if you wanted to like trick the system into thinking you just put another hard drive in, you could create these virtual volumes that have nothing in them, but they're taking up the amount of space, whatever you say. And you could use those to like create Z pools and stuff like that with it, just to learn how to use. And I don't know if there's a way of doing that on Linux or not, but yeah, I was really surprised. It's not the most performant thing on earth, because I just don't think it gets that kind of development love, and I don't know who's using this out of anger and why. It'd be interesting to find somebody that's actually using anything Illumos or Open Solaris based.
Solaris is dead.
Well,
SunOS is
Solaris
gone.
is, but the Illumos has kind of been the
Continuation.
I was going to say the inspiration is inspired by it, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
The brainchild, if you will. But I just don't know anybody that uses it anymore.
When you get down to this, you could probably start knowing the people by name who use it, right?
Yeah.
There's a small community on Telegram for the Illumos project that's somewhat active. There's a IRC channel, there's a mailing list, so yeah, I mean, there's, I guess I say probably an enthusiastic, small crowd of people. For me, it was just a matter of curiosity. I just makes me appreciate what we have on, Linux Mint or on Ghost BSD. And I just like to see how different operating systems do things differently. If you start poking around in the file management system, it's just like BSD. It's remarkably similar to, Linux and free and BSD. It's very, very similar, the way that everything's structured and organized. So yeah, that was my wanderings for the last month.
Right. Well, okay. Looks like that'll do for wanderings then. Let me get scrolled back down here. Looks like we do have some feedback, don't we? Vibrations from the ether. Joe, you got this?
Yeah, I got it. So Mike S. sent this to us. He says, "Hello, Joe. I've been listening to you for years and tilts for many years. I recall episode 500 when I was installing trim in my basement. 500 back then was unheard of. I did email Rich once pointing out that he was being a real jerk to Joel. Apparently, he has moved on. I have Mint on one of my 6 T480s. It's not his daily driver, though. I recall you do quite a bit of work with earphones and headphones, so checking if you have any advice before I dive in. I don't recall if you do wired and or wireless. Hopefully you don't mind a potentially quick question. I have a pair of Wireless Monster 101 Plus earbuds. The right-hand side battery is done. It lasts about 15 minutes. I opened one side. It looks like a pretty standard 501010 3.7 volt battery available online. Any tips before I start? From what I see online, the batteries ship without leads, so I'll have to solder the battery side. I do have a fine tip soldering iron, and I can solder. Thanks for any advice. I responded, that is awesome. Okay, a couple of tips. Get some non-expanding glue. Super glue can do it, but you only get the one chance. If you think the device will stay together without it, that is also fine. Capped-on tape is helpful. Also look closely at the battery that is there. If there is a board under the capped-on tape that is on it, you will need that. There might not be one there. I looked at a couple of the 501010 batteries for sale from AliExpress, and none of them had one attached. Pre-tin the connections so you spend the minimum amount of time heating up the connections on the batteries. I don't do much with true wireless earbuds anymore just because of how much of a pain they are to get back together and have them stay together. I expect since you can solder, you understand you will need some flux. Also, make sure they have a charge before you attach them. If the voltage is too low, they might not charge after you have it all put together. Anything over 3.4 volts should be fine. I have a bunch of 18650 charging boards that I keep around that can do it, but if you don't, you can take apart someone's disposable vape that has a charging port and make one. Just move the leads from the battery on the device and put some temporary ones on the 501010 to it. Doesn't take very long. Response from Mike. Joe, thank you for the detailed reply. I checked it. It's just a naked battery, capped on tape all around. I think I will go for it. Good point about charging first. Luckily, I have a gallon bucket full of those vapes. I pick up trash along the country roads by my house when I go for my noon walk. There are just some of the assortment of the crap I pick up. Eventually, I have to bring them somewhere to recycle. And he did include a picture that was a bucket full of disposable vapes. These particular earbuds snap together, so hopefully they go back together without too much drama. I'll let you know how I make out. Cheers from Canada. Mike. And then I responded, heck yeah, man. So many projects you can do with those batteries. 3.7 volt is kind of universal, so they are easily adaptable. And you can do a search, and you can see different projects people have done with the 3.7 volt batteries from various vapes. I mean, as long as they're the same type and they hold the same amount of voltage, you can even string them together. And yeah, so that was my conversation with Mike. It was kind of cool.
Yeah, we haven't got any feedback in quite some time, so that's actually really cool. We love hearing from you folks. Let us know what you think about stuff, or if you got any questions, give us something to argue about. There you go.
Yeah.
It's always fun.
Tell us we shouldn't talk politics anymore.
Well, we're never going to stop doing that, so you can tell us. All right, so check this out. Looks like we've got a who put this in?
I did.
Okay,
I posted a YouTube video from, what was it, Stez Sticks Fix. He's a podcaster that does repairs. And I turned a vape into a lithium ion battery charger for some reason. And since it was along the same lines as what we were talking about, I've included it here. He does go through how he made it. I mean, if it's already got the charging board there and you pull everything else out and you just run some leads out, hook it up to a battery, and you're good to go. But yeah, he shows you how.
Sweet. Well, that's it, kids. Moving on to housekeeping and announcements. Thank you for listening to this episode of mintCast. If you see something you think we should talk about, tell us, and I mean it. Send us an email, mintcast@mintcast.org. Join us live on YouTube. Post at the mintcast subreddit. I don't know if anybody does that anymore, but chat with us on Discord, Matrix, and Telegram. Matrix is my favorite, hands down. The Discord still exists, but I wish it didn't. Telegram, you can get the rest of the guys on there. Our next episode will be 2 p.m. U.S. Central Time on Sunday, July 5th, 2026. There's a link in the show notes to get that converted to your time zone. Next Saturday, we'll be hosting a roundtable live stream. Please come and join us using Video Ninja at 2 p.m. U.S. Central Time on Saturday, June 27th, 2026. We need to put the link in here. It's actually just type mintcast.org/roundtable, and it'll take you right into the video room. And yeah, there's a link to get that converted. Live stream information is at mintcast.org/livestream. Wrapping up, Joe.
Well, on a couple other podcasts, I'm on the Linux Link Tech Show, which you can get at tllts.org. I'm on the Linux Lugcast, linuxlugcast.com. Send me an email. I obviously respond, jb@mintcast.org, or you can buy me a coffee on Ko-fi using the link in the show notes. And I'm also at JEBoylan on Matrix, matrix.org. Moss couldn't be here with us today. You can catch him at Full Circle Weekly News, moss at bodhilinux.com. He's on Mastodon at Zyvala at hosttux.social, and occasionally he puts out a show on HPR. Bill?
Yeah, you can email me, bill@mintcast.org. I'm at WCHauser3 on matrix.org, Bill_H on Discord. I'm at WCHauser3 at Fossidon.org on Mastodon. Also, check out the other podcasts I'm on called Linux OTC. I do that show with Eric, Majid, and Charlie. Majid couldn't be here with us today. You can email him, Dr. Majid at mintcast.org. He's at atypical doctor, all one word, at the Matrix. Well, it's at matrix.org. I guess that is important. He's Atypical Doctor on Discord. There's a link in the show notes to his other show, Atypical Doctor Podcast. He's also, as I said, on Linux OTC, but also on Distro Hoppers Digest. Eric could not be here with us today either. You can email him. He's eric@mintcast.org. He's also at ESA1975 at matrix.org on Matrix. Charles could not be here with us today. He's charles@mintcast.org. At JupiterFan2022_1 at matrix.org. He's Mr. PDX on Discord. Jim?
Yes, you can email me at jim@mintcast.org. I'm on Matrix as well, Bocophilia, matrix.org. GNU to Linux on Discord. And I also have a few episodes of my own podcast called The Linux Shortcut on YouTube.
All right. Before we leave, we want to make sure we acknowledge some of the people who make mintcast possible. Archive.org for hosting our audio files, Hopstar for our logo, and NetRD for our animated logo, Londoner for our time sinks and various other contributions. But last but not least, the Linux Mint development team for the fine distro we love to talk about. Thanks, Clem.
Thanks, Clem.
And Co.
And out. Thanks, everybody in the live stream. We will see